Stop scrolling. There is a certain kind of person who will never tell you they are hurting. They will not raise their voice. They will not send a message. They will not sit across from you and say, "This wounded me." Instead, they will go quiet. Gradually, invisibly, completely. They will smile when they have to, answer when spoken to, and carry on with the ordinary movements of life. And underneath all of it, in some private room inside themselves that no one else has ever been allowed to enter, they will fall apart completely alone. If that is you, this video is not going to tell you that something is wrong with you. It is going to show you exactly why you are the way you are, and it is going to change the way you understand yourself forever. Here is what most people assume when someone goes quiet after being hurt. They call it passive aggression. They call it manipulation. They say that person is punishing you, pulling away on purpose, wielding silence like a weapon designed to make others feel guilty. And I understand why that interpretation is so common, because from the outside, the withdrawal looks identical, whether it is anger or agony. The quiet looks the same either way. But psychology tells a completely different story. In the overwhelming majority of cases, the person who goes silent when they are hurt is not trying to control the situation. They are trying to survive it. They are not withdrawing from you. They are retreating to the only place that has ever felt safe enough to fall apart in. And the silence is not a strategy. It is a scar. Today, we are going to go through 6 signs that this is you. Not to label you, not to explain you away, but to finally give language to something you have felt your entire life and never quite been able to name. And I want you to pay particular attention to the 6th sign, because it is the one almost no one talks about, and it is the one that clarifies everything else. Before we get to the signs, we need to understand something foundational. This behavior was not chosen. It was not a personality quirk you were born with. It was learned, and it was learned the way all deep patterns are learned, not through a single dramatic moment, but through a series of quiet, accumulated experiences that your nervous system registered and remembered long before you had the capacity to question them. Developmental psychologists describe this through what is called an emotionally invalidating environment, and this does not require extreme circumstances. It does not require neglect or cruelty. It simply requires a consistent, repeated experience in which expressing pain, showing hurt, or asking for comfort was met with dismissal, irritation, or silence. It requires enough moments where the message you received, spoken or unspoken, was this: your pain is too much. Keep it inside. And the brain, which is an extraordinary learning machine, adapts. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that manages complex emotional decisions and social behavior, began encoding a rule. When you are hurting, go somewhere no one can reach you. The silence, in other words, is not a character flaw. It is a survival strategy that once made perfect sense. Now, let us move to the signs. Sign 1. You learned that your pain was too much for the room. You learned somewhere along the way that your pain was too much for the people around you, and that lesson became the foundation of everything that followed. You probably cannot pinpoint the exact moment it happened. It rarely arrives all at once. It arrives in accumulation. The time you cried and were told to stop being so sensitive. The time you shared something that genuinely hurt you and watched the person you trusted look away. The time you expressed a wound and somehow, by the end of the conversation, you were the one apologizing. Researcher Brené Brown spent years studying vulnerability across thousands of people, and what she found is both simple and devastating. The capacity to express pain openly is not a personality trait. It is a learned sense of safety. People who can say "I am hurting" with ease did not receive a different set of emotions. They received consistent evidence that showing those emotions was safe. You received the opposite evidence, and your nervous system, which is far more efficient at learning from painful experiences than pleasant ones, took that evidence and built a wall from it, not out of weakness, out of intelligence. Because somewhere at some point you were right, that the risk of speaking was higher than the cost of silence. The tragedy is that the wall was built for a specific room, a specific chapter, a specific version of the world, and it has been with you in every room, every chapter, every version of the world ever since. Here is what I find absolutely fascinating, and I want you to hold on to this. You did not learn to go quiet because you are broken. You learned to go quiet because you were paying attention. Sign 2. When you go quiet, you are not empty, you are overwhelmed. When you go quiet, the people around you assume there is nothing happening inside you. That is perhaps the most profound misunderstanding you have ever lived inside. Because when you go quiet, you are not empty, you are overwhelmed. The silence is not an absence of feeling. It is the presence of too much of it. Psychologists who study the neurological basis of emotional processing have identified what is called interoceptive sensitivity, your brain's capacity to read and register the internal physical signals of emotion, the tightening in the chest, the heaviness behind the eyes, the particular quality of ache that arrives when someone you love has caused you pain. And in people who go silent when hurt, this internal signaling system is almost always calibrated extremely high. You feel things with an intensity that your face rarely reflects. You have simply become exceptional at the performance of stillness. A study published in the journal Emotion found something that should rewrite how people see you. Individuals who suppress their emotional expression show significantly higher levels of physiological arousal during emotional events than individuals who express openly. Your body is not quiet when you are quiet. Your body is at its loudest. You are simply the only one who can hear it. Carl Jung described this as the introversion of affect, the tendency of certain people to direct the energy of emotional experience entirely inward. Not because they feel less, but because they have learned that the inside is the only safe place to feel at all. The next time someone tells you that you are being cold or distant or unreadable, I want you to remember this. You are not cold. You are a person carrying a storm behind a closed door. And the door is closed, not because there is nothing inside, but because you have not yet decided whether the person on the other side is ready to witness it. Sign 3. You protect everyone else from the one thing that is destroying you. And this one requires you to be honest with yourself. When you are hurting, your instinct is not to reach for the people who love you. Your instinct is to shield them from what you are carrying, to make sure your pain does not become their burden, to hold it cleanly inside yourself so that the relationships in your life remain intact, uncontaminated by the weight of what you are really going through. This is not strength. I mean that with every ounce of respect I have for you. This is not strength. It is a very old belief operating beneath the surface that says, my needs are too large for this relationship to survive. And so, you become the person who never asks, the person who says, I'm fine, when asked how you are. Not because you want to deceive, but because saying, I am not fine, requires something of the other person, and the thought of being a weight to someone you love is genuinely unbearable to you. Psychologists call this the burden belief, and research consistently links it to early experiences in which the child's emotional needs were described, directly or indirectly, as excessive. When you grew up hearing, in words or in silence, that your needs were too much, you developed a strategy. Carry everything alone. Ask for nothing, and the relationship will survive. A research team at the University of Rochester found that individuals with high emotional suppression tendencies reported significantly lower relationship satisfaction, not because their relationships were worse objectively, but because the consistent withholding of genuine emotional truth created a quiet, growing distance between them and the people who wanted most to know them. Here is the cruelest part. The very silence that you used to protect the relationship is the silence that slowly hollows it out. You are giving everyone around you everything except the one thing that would actually bring them closer to you. If any of these signs have already hit close to home, I want to ask you something right now. Drop a comment with the number of the sign that feels most like you. I read every single one, and keep watching because the signs only get deeper from here. Sign 4. You have rehearsed the conversation you will never have, and if this is you, you already know exactly what I'm about to say. You are extraordinarily fluent in conversations that have never happened. Inside the world, inside your head, you have said everything. Every honest thing, every difficult thing, every sentence you have swallowed in the moment and carried home with you instead. You have imagined how it would go, what they would say, how you would respond. You have built the entire structure of the conversation that you will most likely never actually have. Psychology calls this a rich inner world, and it is directly connected to what happens when emotional expression feels unsafe in the external world. Your mind, which needed somewhere to put everything it was not allowed to say, built its own room for it, a room that is vast and detailed and completely invisible to everyone around you. This is where your deepest honesty lives, not in your spoken words, but in the unrehearsed, unedited thoughts that only run when no one can hear them. And here is what this inner world becomes over time. On one hand, it is the source of your most profound self-understanding, your greatest emotional intelligence, your ability to see into situations and relationships with a clarity that often astonishes the people who catch a glimpse of it. On the other hand, it becomes an escape hatch. When the external world becomes too much, you retreat into the rehearsed version, the version where you finally said it, the version where they finally understood, the version where you were not the one carrying it alone. And sometimes you stay there far longer than is good for you. Because the inner world is so controlled, so secure, so much kinder than the unpredictability of actually saying the thing out loud, that it becomes a place you prefer to the world that exists outside it. You are not detached. You are not absent. You are living in a dimension of your own emotional experience that most people around you have never been invited into. And the loneliness of that, if you are willing to admit it right now, is one of the heaviest things you carry. Sign 5. You would rather slowly disappear than risk ending things loudly. And this is the one that has probably already cost you something you did not want to lose. When a relationship hurts you enough, when the accumulation of unspoken things reaches a certain weight, you do not confront it. You begin quietly and almost invisibly to withdraw. Not in one dramatic moment, not in a conversation where you say, "This is not working anymore." You simply begin to take up less space. You respond a little slower. You initiate a little less. You are still there in every technical sense, but some essential part of you has already started moving toward the door. Psychologist John Gottman, whose research spans 4 decades of studying relationships in extraordinary detail, identified what he called the stonewalling response, a pattern in which one person in a relationship begins to emotionally shut down, not from indifference, but from physiological flooding, a state in which the nervous system is so overwhelmed by emotional input that it can no longer process or respond. You are not stonewalling because you stopped caring. You are stonewalling because you care so much and have no safe way to say so that your system shuts the door as an act of self-preservation. And here is what makes this so painful. You are not leaving. You are retreating to a distance from which you believe you can still love this person without getting hurt by them. You are trying to find the exact position where you are close enough to keep the relationship, but far enough to stop the bleeding. But that distance never stays fixed. It grows slowly. And one day you look up and realize that the person you were trying not to lose has been watching you fade for months without knowing why. You were not trying to destroy the relationship. You were trying to survive it, and no one, including you, knew how to say so. Sign 6. You have been waiting your whole life for someone to ask the right question. This is the sign almost no one discusses, and it is the one that explains every other sign in this video. Underneath the silence, underneath the protection, underneath the rehearsed conversations, and the slow withdrawals, and the pain you have carried alone for longer than you can accurately remember, there is a waiting. A very specific, very quiet, very ancient waiting. You are waiting for someone to ask the right question. Not, how are you? Not, are you okay? Not the questions that come with their own expected answers already built in. You are waiting for someone to sit close enough, stay long enough, and look carefully enough to ask the question that reaches past all the performed fineness. The question that says, I see that something is there. I am not going anywhere. You do not have to manage how this lands for me. Every sign we have talked about today, the learned silence, the overwhelming internal world, the protection of others at your own expense, the retreating before you can be left, all of it traces back to one single wound. The wound of not having been asked that question consistently enough, early enough, by the right people when it mattered most. Psychologist John Bowlby, whose work on attachment theory remains one of the most significant contributions to developmental psychology ever made, described the foundational human need as this: the need to know that there is a safe harbor, a person or a place or a relationship in which being your most unguarded, unmanaged, unperforming self will not cost you anything, that it is safe to be there, that you are welcome there. Many people who go quiet when they are hurting grew up without that harbor. Not because they were unloved, but because the love they received came with conditions they absorbed without being told. And so they have been waiting quietly, patiently, behind every silence they have ever kept for evidence that the harbor exists, that somewhere in some relationship it is finally safe to speak. You are not waiting because you are passive. You are waiting because you are still running a test that started before you were old enough to know you were running it. So, where does this leave you? If these 6 signs have described your life in ways you have never seen put into words before, I want you to hear something very clearly. You are not broken. You are not cold. You are not passive-aggressive or difficult or impossible to love. You are a person who learned to carry extraordinary weight in the only way that was available to you at the time, and the carrying has been so long and so quiet and so completely invisible to the world around you that most people in your life have no idea what you have actually been holding. The silence was not a flaw. It was the most honest response you had to a world that had not yet shown you. It was safe to be honest, and the weight inside it, every unsaid thing, every swallowed sentence, every rehearsed conversation that lived only in the architecture of your own mind, that weight is not evidence that you are damaged. It is evidence that you feel deeply, care profoundly, and have been protecting people with the intensity that they may never fully understand. What psychology consistently shows is this: the silence does not break through therapy alone. It does not break through self-help alone. It breaks through safety. It breaks through the slow accumulation of evidence gathered over real time and real relationships that saying I am hurting will not cost you the thing you are most afraid of losing. That evidence does not arrive all at once. It arrives in small moments. One honest sentence, one person who stayed, one conversation that did not go the way every previous conversation taught you it would. And those moments do not just change the conversation. They begin slowly and irreversibly to change the story your nervous system has been telling you about what happens when you let someone in. If any of this felt like it was written about you, I want you to hear this one last thing. The quietest people are often carrying the loudest lives. And the fact that you are still here, still watching, still trying to understand yourself rather than dismiss yourself tells me something important about you. You have not stopped wanting to be known. You have simply been waiting for somewhere safe enough to begin. Leave a comment with the sign that felt most like your life. I read every single one, and if this video gave language to something you have carried for a long time, share it with someone who might need to hear it, because your understanding today might be the exact thing someone in your life has been waiting their whole life to receive.